All right, for Algebra 8.5, we are starting factoring trinomials. So in this particular lesson, we're gonna start by factoring when they're both positive. That's kind of the easiest spot to factor. So let me explain actually without these wordy terms what we're doing. We're taking a trinomial that's already been foiled or boxed. So they've already solved it, and this is the answer they got. And we're basically undoing it. We're basically coming up with two sets of parentheses, two binomials, that when you multiply them by foiling it or boxing it, if you prefer the box method, but I would really rather you guys start using FOIL because it's going to help you with your numbers, with your number sense. When you were to FOIL this, you would get the problem, which is the answer kind of backwards. So again, what we're doing is they're giving us the answer after they've used FOIL method to multiply, and we are backing up and telling what two sets of parentheses those were in order to get this. So here's how they do it. You're going to try to think of what two numbers you can multiply to get 15. So I would list them off to the side. Like, what can we multiply to get 15? 1 times 15. What else can we multiply to get 15? 3 times 5. And I think that's it. And now, in order to get your middle term, we're trying to look at the same factors of 15 and see which of those we can add to get 8. So can you add 1 and 15 to get 8? No, you cannot, so it can't be those. Can you add 3 and 5 to get 8? Yes, you can. So these are our factors. This is why it's called factoring. These are our factors of 15 that when you add them is your B term, is your 8. So, and they actually did the same thing over here. 1 and 15, no, that ended up adding up to 16. But 3 and 5 equals 8. So 3 and 5 are our factors. So that's how they got x plus 3 times x plus 5. So again, you're going to look at which of these numbers, which of the factors you can multiply to get this term, and you can also use those same numbers to add to get this term. And that's all there is to it, really, for today. So let's look at the U-try. So we're going to see what are the factors of 24. So what numbers can we multiply to get 24? You can multiply 1 and 24. You can multiply 2 and 12. You can multiply 3 and 8, and you can multiply 4 and 6. And I think that's all. So looking at these factors of 24, which of these now can we add to get 11? So 1 plus 24, not 11. 2 plus 12, not 11. 8 plus 3, yes. 4 plus 6, no. So 3 times 8 is 24, and 3 plus 8 is 11. So that means our answer is r plus 3, because it's positive, and r plus 8. Okay, and you can always check. I would highly recommend you checking. Go ahead and FOIL this. FOIL is first times first, which is r squared. Outsides is your O, that would be 8r. Insides is 3r, and remember your outsides and insides are always like terms, so we're going to combine those to get 11r. And then lasts is your last number times your last number, which 3 times 8 is 24. So if this was our original problem, then we did factor it correctly. So 3 plus 8 times, 3, r plus 3 times r plus 8. So that would be the answer there. Okay, since this is technically a U-try, I would recommend pushing pause right now and you try this one and see if you get the same answer I do. All right, I'm going to go ahead and think of the factors of 12. The factors of 12 are 12 and 1, 3 and 4, 6 and 2. Okay, which of these factors of 12 add to get 7? Not 12 and 1, not 6 and 2, but yes, 3 and 4. So that means our answer is x plus 3 times x plus 4. And again, you can always FOIL it to actually check and see if it ends up being x squared plus 7x plus 12. Okay, I'm going to add a little something to it now. Now my B term, which is this middle term, is going to be a negative. So we're still going to come up with factors of 24, but when you multiply to get 24, it needs to end up being a positive. And when you add it's going to need to be a negative. So let's think that through. What can you multiply to end up being positive? You can multiply a positive times a positive to get a positive, or you can multiply a negative times a negative to get a positive. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you that they're going to have to both be negatives in this case, because a negative times a negative will equal a positive 24, and a negative plus a negative will equal a negative 11 when we're trying to add the two factors in this particular part. So we're not looking for two positives anymore like we got up here and over here. Now we're looking for two negatives, because a negative times a negative will be this positive 24, and a negative plus a negative will be this negative 11. So again, still trying to identify the factors of 24, which let's just do this. I know they've already done it over here, but that's not my work, and I want you guys to see it how I would think through it. So how to get 24 by multiplying? You could do 24 times 1. You could do 3 times 8. You could do 2 times 12. What else? I think that's it. Oh, 6 times 4. Okay, but remember, they're both going to have to be negatives, because I need it to multiply to be a positive but add to be a negative. So I'm talking negative 24 times negative 1. That would be positive 24. But is it added up to negative 11? No. Negative 3 times negative 8 does multiply to be positive 24. Does it add to be negative 11? Yes, actually, right? Negative 8, negative 9, negative 10, negative 11. This is it. So this is it. So it's probably not these. So our answer would be x minus 3 times x minus 8. X minus 3, x minus 8. So let's double check it. If you were to FOIL it, it would be x squared. The outsides would be negative 8. The insides would be negative 3. Negative 8 plus negative 3 is negative 11. Good. And then the last, negative 3 times negative 8 is positive 24. So, and they did all this over here. Actually, they did the exact same thing I did. I just wrote it off to the side. They wrote it in a table. It's all fancy. So, but they checked it, just like I just now checked it, and they got the same answer we did. Okay, so let's move on and try a couple of these. So again, we need it to multiply to be a positive 8. So if you're multiplying to be positive, but you're adding to be a negative, then they're both going to need to be negative terms. So there can be a negative times a negative to make this positive 8, and a negative plus a negative to be a greater negative 6. So the factors of 8 are 1 and 8, 2 and 4. That's it. And remember, they're both going to be negatives in this case, because I need it to be a positive when you multiply and a negative when you add. So which of these adds to be a negative 6 and multiplies to be a negative 8? I hope you know that it's this one. So it would be y minus 2 times y minus 4. All right, and again, check it if you want by FOILing and make sure this is what you end up getting. All right, this is a good time to push pause and you try part B. All right, I'm going to list the factors of 42, and I don't know them very well. So let me check. 1 and 42, 2 and 21. Does 42 divide by 4? Nope. Okay, 6 and 7. 6 and 7. All right, I believe that might be all. But let's try. Remember, both of these are going to have to be negative, because a negative times a negative is going to be a positive 42, and we want a negative plus a negative to be negative 13. And that is going to be these. Negative 6 plus negative 7 is negative 13, and negative 6 times negative 7 is positive 42. So the answer is r minus 6 times r minus 7. All right, let's look at the next page. This is kind of backwards. It's now I'm going to have a positive added term and a negative when you multiply them. So let's think through, what are the only ways to get a negative when you multiply? That's with one of each, right? One has to be positive and one has to be negative in order to multiply them to get a negative. So when we get our answer, one is going to be adding and one is going to be subtracting, because that's the only way to multiply to make your last term negative. So, and it doesn't matter. I don't care if whatever you get, you write the plus one first and the minus one second, or if you flip-flop it and you write it as the one that was subtracted first and the one that was added second. The order of these getting multiplied doesn't matter. So let's think about the factors of 15. So I can think of 1 and 15, 3 and 5, and that's it. And I need one to be negative and one to be positive, and it could be either way. But when I add them, I need it to be positive 2. So I need to come up with two numbers that when I multiply them, I get negative 15, and when I add them, I get positive 2. So it's not going to be 1 and 15, because either way you cut it, that's either going to be 16 or 14, depending on which place you put the negative. But these are 2 apart. So I know that's where my 2 is going to come into play. So I need to choose, will my 3 be negative or will my 5 be negative? Because negative 3 times 5 is negative 15, but also positive 3 times negative 5 is also negative 15. So I need to know which one is going to be the negative. When you add them, it needs to come out to be positive 2. When you add, it needs to be positive 2. So I'm going to choose to put my negative here, because negative 3 plus 5 is positive 2. If I had done it this way and put my negative on the 5, positive 3 plus negative 5 would have been negative 2. And I don't want negative 2. I want positive 2. So that's why I have to choose the negative on the 3. So the negative has to be with the 3 and the positive has to be with the 5. So this is going to be the correct answer. And they did it the same way. They did all 4. They put the negative in different spots and the negative in different spots to see that this was the only way that it worked. This was the only way that it worked. And so this was the answer. All right, so let's try some. I know that I need to multiply and get a negative 36, and I need to add and get a positive 9. Okay, so let's list the factors of 36. 1 and 36, 2 and I think 18, 3 and 12, 4 and 9, 6 and 6. 6 times 6 is 36. I think that's it. All right, that's it. So I know that one of these is going to have to be negative and one of them is going to have to be positive, because that's the only way to multiply and get a negative. So in fact, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and put n plus something, n minus something, because I know this is going to be the answer. And the plus coming first or the minus coming first, I don't really care which one you do, just as long as you have one of each. So which of these numbers can I multiply and get negative 36, but let's think through which ones I can add to get 9. So look at the numbers and see which ones are 9 apart one way or another. 1 and 36, no, not 9 apart. 2 and 18, not 9 apart, because that would be if you add them, it's 20, and if you subtract them, it's 16. 3 and 12, if you add them, it's 15. If you subtract them, it's 9. So I think we're going to go with the 3 and 12, but let's double check. 9 plus 4 is 13, and 9 minus 4 is 5. So 13 and 5 aren't going to be it. 6 and 6, no. 6 plus 6 is 12. 6 minus 6 is 0. So, but 3 and 12 can make a 9. All right, so now let's think through which has to be positive and which has to be negative. When I multiply, I need it to be negative, so it's going to be one of each. And when I add, I need it to be positive 9. So let's just stick the negative here and see if that works. Is negative 3 plus 12 positive 9? Yes, so I guessed it right on the first one. If it was negative 12 plus 3, it would have been negative 9. So I need my 3 to be negative, and I need my 12 to be the positive one. All right, this is a good time to push pause and try. Oh, well, you can try this one if you want, but notice that the middle term, when we add, I need it to be a negative this time. So I don't think we've tried any of those, but go ahead and push pause if you want to try it on your own. If not, I'm going to go ahead and tell you that to multiply and get a negative, you still have one of each. So the only way to multiply and get a negative is by having c plus something times c minus something. So I'm going to go ahead and start by doing that because I know at least one of them has to be negative. All right, the factors of 21 are 1 and 21, 3 and 7. I think that's it. So which of these two numbers are 4 apart? We can get a 4 out of it by adding or subtracting. By adding 21 and 1, you get 22. By subtracting 21 and 1, you get 20. So neither one of those work. 3 and 7 are 4 apart. So this is our winner. Now we have to decide which one is negative and which one is positive. If you add them, it needs to be negative 4. If you add them, it needs to be negative 4. So I need to put my negative here because a 3 and a negative 7, if you add those, it is negative 4. So my 7 is the one that needs to be negative. 3 is positive. All right. This one is the same way. We have a negative and a negative. So when we multiply, we need it to be negative, which means there needs to be one of each because the only way to multiply and get a negative is by multiplying a positive and a negative. All right, and then when I add them, I also need it to be negative. So let's list the factors of 35. 1 times 35 is 35. 5 times 7. And I'm going to stop right there because I know that 5 and 7 are 2 apart from each other. So actually that's going to be it. I hope you guys are starting to kind of chunk your numbers in a way that makes more sense to you too. So 5 and 7 are 2 apart, but we need to decide which would need to be positive and which would need to be negative in order to add them and get negative 2. So you should have put the negative in front of the 7 because negative 7 plus 5 is negative 2. Negative 7 times 5 is negative 35. All right, so my 5 is positive, my 7 is negative. Sorry about the little doorbell thing. All right, push pause and you guys try the negative 72, or the x squared minus x equals, or minus 72. If you're not quite ready to try this one, I will tell you, don't forget this means 1. This means negative 1. So when you're adding, your two numbers should only be one number apart from each other. All right, so negative 72. The factors of 72 are 1 and 72. I don't know what 2 is. 72 divided by 2, this is sad, is 36. So 2 and 36. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, if the adding is 1, that means the two numbers that are going to be our answer are only one number apart from each other. So they're going to be like 5 and 6, or 7 and 8, or 9 and 10, but they're only one number apart. And right now, 72, I can think of in my head, is 8 and 9. 8 and 9 are one number apart. Isn't 8 times 9 72? Yes. So 8 and 9 are one number apart. And since we're adding and getting negative 1, these need to be one number apart. So when I multiply, I get a negative. That means one of these needs to be negative and one of these needs to be positive. So x plus something, x minus something. And I know it's going to be 8 and 9. And when I add them, I need to have it be negative 1. So that means that I need to put the negative on the 9 because negative 9 plus 8 is negative 1. So it's minus on the 9. All right, again, FOIL it and check it, or box method if that's what you prefer, and check it. Make sure that this is the answer you get once you FOIL or box it. Okay, and then the very last one, this is more of a challenge. I don't think we'll assess you on this, but it's still good practice. So I'm going to skip the example. You can look at it if you want, but I'm going to go straight down to the you try. This is when you happen to have two different variables, an m and an n. But it's not trickier. It just means you're going to start with one of them and have the other one at the end of it. So m squared, since the first term is m, that means it's going to be an m at the front of both. And since the last term is negative, in order to multiply and get a negative, you have to have one of each, a positive times a negative. So I can go ahead and fill that in. And since our last term has an n squared on it, that means whatever numbers we get, we're also going to have an n attached to them. So, because whatever we get times whatever we get has to also be two n's, so n squared. So now we need to just think of the factors of 27. So 1 and 27. 3 and 9, I think that's it. And when you add them, they need to be 6. So here we go, 3 and 9 are 6 apart. And now we need to decide which one is negative and which one is positive, to where when we add, we get a positive 6 for the answer. To add these and get a positive 6, you would need your 3 to be negative, because negative 3 plus 9 would be our positive 6. So these are our two factors, negative 3 and positive 9. So negative 3 and positive 9. So again, FOIL it or box it if you want to check, but this really isn't any harder. It just has an extra variable on it, but really you do it the same way.